In Bo Berman's book titled Zapped, he has tons and tons of facts about light, the research of light, the history of our knowledge of light. And in it, he says that the entire universe is made up of 99.9999999% of light. Well, that's extraordinary considering that most of it is invisible to us humans. Now, light is made through an atom receiving some sort of energy. And this is why it's so ubiquitous in the universe, because some sort of energy can be heat, electricity, anything like that. And what happens is you have the atom, and then when it receives that energy, the electron gets pulled away from it, and then it snaps back in quickly toward the rest of the atom. And in that space between the two, a particle of light, for lack of a better phrase, a photon is made. And this photon shoots out from the atom, and that's where all of our light comes from. That's how it's all made, so to say. There used to be a big debate on whether light works or moves as a wave or a particle. Now, interestingly enough, it turns out it moves as both. So say you have an antenna here emitting radio waves, and you have an antenna here receiving those radio waves. Now, when this transmits its radio waves, it's going to send it out in a radius everywhere as waves. Now, when this antenna over here finally receives it, it's going to turn it into an electrical signal, which is particle movement. So in short, light moves as waves until it's perceived by someone or something, and then it moves as a particle. The same way it works with our eyes. Visible light strikes our retinas, and then our eyes send a signal to our brain through electricity. Particle movement, once again, moves linearly, and it gives us the perception of color and brightness. Now, there's a whole spectrum of light, which is separated based on wavelength and frequency. First, you have radio waves being the longest of waves, microwaves, infrared waves, visible waves, ultraviolet waves, X-rays, and the shortest being gamma rays. Let's talk about radio waves first. Do they penetrate the Earth's atmosphere? Yes, some do. Some get reflected off of the ionosphere, which is beneficial to humans actually, because let's go back to the radio antenna analogy. You have one here and one here. Say this one is America and this one is in France. When this transmits its waves, they go up, they bounce off the ionosphere, come back down, and eventually hit that antenna in France, which is long-distance radio communication. You can actually use it in higher frequencies to do short distance. So, say, one side of a lake to the other side of the lake, the signal goes straight to it, essentially. The long-distance radio waves aren't heard as clearly because, well, the longer wavelengths. It has to go around buildings, around mountains, until it finally reaches its destination. In a report from 2000 by T.D. Carosi, he states that our increasing use of radio technology is actually deteriorating the ionosphere the same way that carbon emissions are deteriorating the ozone in the atmosphere. Now, this could be detrimental to us because of, obviously, our extreme use of radio communication, radio technology. He states that there is not much, as of 2000, there was not much research being done on the topic, so it is quite a possibility that it is deteriorating. Next, we will talk about microwaves. Do they penetrate the atmosphere? No, they do not. Their wavelengths are measured in centimeters. As a reference, the screen on the door of your microwaves, those little holes in it, microwaves are actually too large to pass through those, and that's how they keep you from getting radiated when cooking your popcorn or TV dinners. Other technologies that use microwaves are phones, cellular phones. It sends the microwaves to a radio tower, and it then sends it back to other phones. And also radars, such as Doppler radar for weather, or radars on submarines, and this is because they cut through fog, smoke, rain, snow extremely well, so you're not going to run out of signal as easily. However, the reason why it cooks your food so well in the microwave is because water absorbs it. And when it absorbs it, it gets turned into heat, which then heats the food, coincidentally. Next, we're going to move to infrared waves. Do these penetrate the atmosphere? Yes, some do. They are very short waves. They're measured from millimeter from crest to crest of the wave. These wavelengths are just perfect for when it hits the atom. It meets the resonance of that atom, so it pushes it just right to where they get enough energy to make heat. Now, don't get it skewed. Infrared waves are not heat. Infrared waves create heat. For example, if you put your hand over a stovetop, the infrared waves leaving the coil are going to hit your hand and excite the atoms in your hand, thus creating heat, making your hand hot. On a normal day, you're normally warmer than your surroundings, which is how the military and other organizations that use night vision devices are able to see you, because those devices use those devices take infrared rays and allow you to perceive them as visible light. So you being warmer than the ambient temperature around you makes you visible to the eye using that device. Next, we're going to move on to visible light, which of course is the light that you and I see every day. Does it penetrate the atmosphere? Yes. Also, our sun and our solar system creates mostly visible light. And interestingly enough, color and brightness actually do not exist in nature. Our eyes were formed specially for Earth and our position in our solar system. Since visible light is the most prevalent light waves from our sun, our eyes were made to perceive those. For example, some birds of prey, nocturnal birds, they can see in ultraviolet. So when they're in the treetops looking down on the ground, they can see a puddle of urine glowing in ultraviolet because that's how their eyes are made. Some owls, actually all owls have very dull colored feathers because they do not see colors. So they do not need to display themselves for mating reasons like other birds do. Next, we're going to move on to ultraviolet radiation, which is extremely interesting because it's extremely helpful to us, but it could also be detrimental to us as well. Does it penetrate the atmosphere? Yes, some of them do. However, thankfully, a lot of it gets reflected back into space. Ultraviolet waves are the first waves on the spectrum that are able to ionize. They mess with the structure of atoms, which is why they can burn your skin. They cause our bodies to create vitamin D, but they also cause problems such as melanoma, skin cancer, when obtained. Too much ultraviolet waves are obtained through your skin. So ultraviolet waves are separated into three different sections. You got UVA, UVB, and UVC. UVAs are actually, if you're looking at the visible spectrum, the very end of it, where the violet starts to dull out, that's actually UVA rays, and they're virtually harmless to us. They don't really do very much. And then there's UVC rays, which are extremely powerful. Not only do they cause cancer, but they can also quickly sterilize, which is impressive. A very interesting fact about UVC rays is that only one photon reaches the Earth every 30 million years. I'd hate to be the person to get struck with that photon because that would be extremely detrimental to your health. And then UVB rays is what we get when we go to the beach to tan. That's what tans us. That's what burns our skin. That's the most harmful ultraviolet ray that we see because we see it most normally, and it causes the most destruction out of all the ones that we see. Um, a warning: ultraviolet waves, even if you're sitting under an umbrella at the beach, of course, ultraviolet waves are not visible rays, so even though you can't see it, it's bouncing off the sand, they're still hitting you, even though you're in the shade. Ultraviolet rays bounce off of moving water better than it bounces off still water, so the waves at the beach, them bouncing off that are going to strike you even more than if you were sitting at, say, a lake. Now, next we're going to talk about X-rays. Do they penetrate the atmosphere? No, they do not. When pointed directly at the eye, humans can perceive X-rays as kind of a bluish-gray hue. Now, of course, we don't do this anymore because X-rays obviously hurt people. That's why we wear lead aprons when we get our teeth X-rayed or an X-ray at the doctor or something like that. They think that you see this bluish-gray hue because of the disturbance they're causing to your eyes. It allows you to perceive it as that, even though you're not actually supposed to. It is also ionizing radiation. It can actually break apart atoms, which is crazy. The best use that we have for X-rays is to penetrate the skin to see the inside of our body, our organs, our bones. It's mostly used in the medical field nowadays. Now, too much exposure of X-rays can turn into burns, hair loss, swollen joints, swollen skin, and actually eventually your skin falling off of your body. So be careful when you're getting X-rayed at the doctor. Next, we're going to move on to gamma rays, which have the shortest wavelength of them all. Do they penetrate the Earth's atmosphere? No, but our sun also does not produce gamma rays because they are only produced by dramatic events in space, such as a star exploding or a black hole or nuclear material decaying in space. An article posted by a university about the electromagnetic spectrum talks about how it is used to kill cancer cells. As I said before, it is also an ionizing ray of light, so it breaks apart atoms. So they use it to instantly kill cancer cells. That's what chemotherapy does. It is too powerful to be seen using mirrors, actually. If one would like to perceive gamma rays as visible light, they would have to actually make it hit electrons so that it would lose enough energy to then be reflected through the mirrors. That's how powerful gamma rays actually are. Gamma ray bursts are beneficial to us scientifically because it shows us those dramatic happenings in space, the black holes, the stars exploding. These bursts can last from half a second to a few seconds long. Now, that was the whole light spectrum. I hope I informed you. I hope the next time you're throwing facts around at a party or something, you can talk about UVC light. You can talk about wearing sunscreen, even if you are holding an umbrella at the beach. I just hope you learned something from this, because a lot of people do not know much about invisible light. They only know about visible light and the prism where it shines the visible light through it and it gets refracted into the rainbow. Thank you for listening.